Okay, I think.
Thank you for joining us. Today we will be speaking with the business recruitment team at the CLT Alliance. This team is responsible for generating new opportunities for jobs and investment in our 15-county region. They play a pivotal role in helping keep the pipeline full of new companies considering our region. My name is Rob Horton. I'm the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at the CLT Alliance. So let's take a minute to meet the team. Stephen?
Hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Pierce. I am Senior Vice President of Business Recruitment.
Hi, my name is Sven Gerzer, and I focus on recruitment for Europe and India specifically, and work with domestic companies as well. And my title is Vice President.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eileen Kai. I am a Vice President of Business Recruitment, focused on Asian market. I work on domestic projects as well.
Good morning. I'm Katie Hines. My title is Vice President Business Recruitment, and I work mostly domestic projects, but also some international as well.
My name is Marvin J. Price. I'm one of the Vice Presidents of Business Recruitment for the Alliance. I work on domestic and international projects.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Byrne. I'm Director of Business Recruitment for this team. I provide support administratively and for projects as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody. Certainly the pandemic has created challenges for every facet of business, but in business recruitment, it's even more interesting. So this team has really pivoted very effectively during the crisis. And so I thought we would take a moment to talk about how this team has been evaluating kind of internal factors inside the region and then external factors impacting how we can target markets around the world. So let me start with Eileen. Eileen, can you set the stage for us on where we are year to date and how we're tracking against our goals for the year?
Business recruitment was tracking very well with its new activity metrics the first 3 months of 2020, but activity slowed down in April due to COVID-19. Travel by the team has curtailed, and as the world has confronted COVID-19, international activity has slowed down considerably compared to 2019. COVID-19 has also slowed down active projects already in the funnel, resulting in fewer project visits. The team is pivoting due to those conditions, which will be addressed later on. Generated project activity was tracking well through March. January to March 2020, 20 projects versus January to March 2019, 18 projects. However, we saw a drop-off once April began, and we have begun to track a few projects below 2019. Also seeing a slight drop-off in the share of international projects. We have not had a significant international travel coupled with coronavirus hitting international market a bit before US. 48% of projects were international through this time last year compared to 40% this year. Also see a pretty significant drop-off in industrial activity, 45% through this time last year compared to 15%. Indicators in manufacturing before COVID-19 signal a slowdown in activity. 6 of the past 8 months show contraction in manufacturing, according to the Institute for Supply Chain Management's PMI. A slight increase in consultants project compared to last year, 29% through this time last year versus 41% this year. Could be multiple factors. Less business development efforts to businesses as we are not traveling as much. Projects that already contracted a consultant might be more likely to kick the tires on the project than a company who was going at it alone. You can see a large share of office projects, including several regional managing offices and sales offices. We have had a few call center projects, as well as high skill projects like software development and professional services. Well, that concludes my report. Back to you, Rob.
Great. Thank you, Eileen. I appreciate the perspective. I think it's really interesting to see how even in the most recent 30 days, we've seen some shift in activity and movement. So, Stephen, with the context that Eileen just provided, the team has been making several immediate adjustments and setting the stage for several long-term pivots. Could you talk about how the team is showing up differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rob. We know that fundamentally what we do is still relevant, but we also know that in response to COVID-19, how we show up needs to change in accordance with the needs of business. So there are some ongoing things that we're doing. There are some immediate pivots that we're making, and then there are some that are more long-term pivots as well. First, all the client services that we typically have provided as a team, whether that be project management, customized research, client visits, although those have shifted to virtual, those still exist, and we're still providing all the same services to our clients that we did pre-coronavirus. Secondly, our recruitment team, our travel has been suspended, but we are focusing on how we do prospecting and lead generation virtually. We have quite a few tools that are at our disposal to allow us to generate target lists of companies. Our local partners rely upon us for this, so it's an important role that we play in the economic development process, and we're committed to continuing a successful lead generation and prospecting work even during this time. And we know that our outreach to our existing clients and our site selection consultant relationships are critical. It's important that we continue doing what we can to move those projects along and cultivating those leads. Despite the fact that we aren't traveling, I think this outreach via email and text and phone and these Zoom calls are critical for us to continue that interaction with our clients and our consultants. There are several immediate changes that our team has made in how we are showing up differently and responding to the way business has been kind of turned on its head during this time. Eileen mentioned earlier that our business recruitment travel has been suspended. We're actually focused, like I mentioned, on our outreach to clients and consultants. We have shifted, obviously, from not hosting clients in person to hosting them virtually, which we've had a number of successful virtual visits in recent weeks. And our team has been hosting Zoom meetings, engaging with our investors and our local economic developers from around the region as well. And that's been really helpful for us in order to really get the pulse on the business community in the region, which we're able then to leverage for our recruitment efforts. In addition, there's a lot of conversation happening externally, and also we're then having those conversations internally about how we shift from a more long-term perspective. We know that there are going to be a lot of changes in how site selection works moving forward. There'll be some factors that companies will, kind of raise the level of emphasis on for what will drive their projects, and some things that maybe were at the top of that list will be moved further down the list. And a good example of that is supply chain, which Sven has done a great job of leading our team in thinking about how supply chain will affect us from a recruitment perspective in the long run. And, there are things that this crisis brings about opportunity. So if you think about opportunities for consolidation, for example, that we saw come out of the 2008 recession, we think that there'll be a lot of kind of more long-term things like those that will have an impact on how we recruit business. So that's some perspective on how we are showing up differently as a recruitment team since coronavirus has changed our economy?
Great. Thank you, Stephen. It's certainly in a business that connectivity is really important. It sounds like you and your team have come up with some very innovative solutions in the short term, and also taking some time to really look at what's going to happen in the long term and how it's going to change the behavior of some of the clients, some of the projects that may end up in the region post-pandemic. So, Katie, Stephen just mentioned the outreach to clients and site selection consultants is an important part of how this team is adjusting. What are we learning from this outreach?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing as far as in the outreach first. And the site selection consultants were reaching out, our business recruitment team is reaching out to each person is reaching out to 10 or more site selection consultants. And this is basically a check-in with these consultants, just showing them a little bit of love, telling them that we're thinking about them, not really asking for any follow-up at this point on trends that they're seeing, because we had heard that they were just being barraged with emails from lots of economic development agencies. And so we just wanted to do a check-in, and we got super positive feedback from that. And we will be doing some future follow-up with them, but we got some really good feedback that they just really appreciated us checking in with them. And then we're also checking in with our clients, both active projects and leads. And we've gotten a mix of feedback from them, mostly positive, but some of our clients are experiencing some pretty good challenges with the COVID-19 situation. And thirdly, we've been checking in with our investors with the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance that support our organization, and just basically a check-in, asking them how we can assist them, talking or telling them about appreciation for their support, and any trends and predictions that they're seeing in their unique industries. And then some of the takeaways that we got from this outreach: relationships really do matter, and we knew that before, but during this time we've really seen some great appreciation from people, from us reaching out. Another takeaway that we got was that we feel like there'll be more future FDI, foreign direct investment opportunities. We did talk to some folks who had currently did have or will have future plant shutdowns, and so that's affecting their business drastically. Some folks said that it was too early to say, how they're going to recover from this, and that they just need some recovery time to figure it out. We heard about some delays in materials and supply chain, and some folks are saying business development is difficult at this time. People don't want to make commitments, they don't want to spend money, so that's another thing that we heard. And also we heard that, and we do agree with that, the second quarter is probably going to be pretty rough for everyone before things start getting better. And then from site selection consultants, they're asking about how communities are pivoting and what they're doing about companies that are looking to relocate, if they are changing their incentives at all, or if they are doing any updates to incentive compliance for companies that already have incentives. And I'll push it back to you, Rob.
Okay, great. Thanks, Katie. I appreciate it. It clearly sounds like a very genuine and a very human approach on our outreach, and I think that's critically important during this time. We can't forget we're all people, and we're all feeling different impacts of how this pandemic is interrupting or causing us to pivot in our projects and perspectives. So that's incredibly valuable and really good insight for how we might be able to move forward. So Marvin, Katie just walked us through the key takeaways from our conversation with existing clients. Our 15 counties rely on us to identify new companies, considering the region for investment. How does our prospecting and lead generation change now that the team's travel has been suspended?
Well, thank you for the question, Rob. And I would say that our business development efforts have shifted, but I would say that they shifted before this year even started. Our organization made investments into CoStar and LinkedIn Premium that gave us an opportunity for us to do some things a little bit more strategically, and we have the availability to do these from our homes or remotely. So regardless of COVID-19, being able to use LinkedIn Premium to do in-mail marketing to different companies, but also to do it in a targeted way to narrow down to the CEO, to the NAICS code. We're able to do that with national CoStar searches. We're able to look into Chicago, New York, LA, San Fran, where we can look at some of the companies that fall into some of our target sectors that we go after to see if the lease rates are, or what are the lease rates, are their lease about to expire, who's the actual point person to reach out to. So those investments that we did on the front end are paying great dividends right now while we're not able to travel. But I would say our business development is still continuing on as like it's been doing for all of 2020. And we're still using our predictive analytics model. So working with the ROIs, the software Gazelle, working with OCO as well, and having those quarterly and bi-weekly phone calls to discuss, all right, well, what are the companies that you're hearing from in Toronto? What are some of the companies that, what are you hearing from them? Do they want to hear from us? Do they anticipate us being able to come and visit? And if not, can we schedule a Zoom conference call like we're doing right now? And last but not least, some low-hanging fruit for us, but something that I think will pay great dividends is using our multipliers and our fund investors in our organizations now. They have their ears to the ground as much as anyone. So being able to partner with them and utilize those resources, I would say our business development hasn't skipped a beat.
Great. Marvin, thank you. It's a great combination of using technology and relationships to help give us a really accurate picture and help us to be able to target those audiences that want to hear our message and really understand where they are kind of in the process of their journey. So thank you. That was really helpful. So Kathleen, the conversation about opening the economy up again has been increasing in recent weeks. While we don't know yet when it will be safe, how is the recruitment planning for when we can travel again?
Well, we were really strategic when we created our 2020 travel calendar in that we spaced out our missions to the same markets. We were lucky in that 2 out of our 4 scheduled missions to Europe happened before COVID-19 took hold globally. And the other 2 missions to Europe aren't scheduled to happen until the fall. So we currently hope that they will go on as planned. Our domestic and Asian missions are the ones that have been disrupted the most. 2 missions were planned to each of the following markets: Japan and China, Greater New York Metro, Chicago, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. So we had to cancel the first mission to each of those, and we're now focused on bolstering the missions to those markets for the fall. As Marvin mentioned, we utilize ROI and OCO, and so we're going to be hitting those markets much harder as far as scheduling meetings with companies and outreach to consultants. and we'll probably add a few more recruiters to those missions in the domestic markets to handle those extra additional appointments and outreach. Our next missions that are scheduled are Toronto and Montreal, both happening in the summer. Toronto is in late June and Montreal is in August. So we're working with ROI on that, and we're prepared to schedule, reschedule those if we need to, especially looking at Toronto in late June. But overall, I think we're doing a really good job in pivoting to accompany to accommodate those missions that are coming up.
Great, thank you, Kathleen. Yes, we were very fortunate early in the year to take those trips to Europe when we could. And it does sound like once the window opens, that we're going to be appropriately resourced to take advantage of those trips and maximize the opportunity when we can travel again. So appreciate it. So while the outreach activities that Katie mentioned and the lead generation activities that Marvin mentioned have been immediate shifts, Sven, can you talk a little bit more about the long-term perspective and what's on the team's radar in pivoting kind of as a result of COVID-19?
Yes, Rob, thank you for the question on that too. Part of what came out very early on in our discussions with existing companies here in the Charlotte region is that supply chain is taking a more and more important role in the success of those businesses and therefore also in our recruitment function. While the workforce and workforce development issues have been driving economic development and recruitment for many years now, supply chain seems to be one of the issues that's moving up to the top of the list for companies on being successful. So part of this is what we started doing is we started taking a very deep dive. Chuck McShane, our research head, as well as I, started looking very closely on who's here in the Charlotte region and who's here in the Carolinas, doing what, selling what to whom, and where they're getting their resources and their materials from, to really understand what is done locally. As companies shift from a global supply chain to either a dual supply chain or a more localized supply chain, we want to be ready to do two things. For one, we want to know who's here, who could potentially jump in as a local existing business to take up some of the supply to the OEMs and the tier ones, the tier twos, and so on that are out there looking for parts. But also we want to identify gaps in our supply chain that we as a recruitment team then can go out and recruit those industries and companies here. One great example is in this one industry we're looking at is construction products. We know that light fixtures are hard to come by right now for any construction projects going on. This is a very easy one where we can go and say, okay, what companies do make light fixtures? Who can we bring here? More complex and detailed is the industrial machinery, where a lot of the, especially the German and the European companies, but also Japanese companies that are here in the Charlotte region and in the Carolinas, making parts and pieces still abroad in their home countries. And we're looking at where the gaps are and then trying to bring those parts of manufacturing here to the Charlotte region. Then overall, two of the large industries in the Carolinas, automotive and aerospace, while both of them in a little bit of a slump, aerospace probably more so than automotive. We do expect them to bounce back after some time. And we will also make sure that we identify the gaps we have in those supply chains for those OEMs that are located here in the Carolinas to make sure we have a good targeted list. Once we're done identifying the target list, this is what's going on while we're in our home office. We will start reaching out to those companies via LinkedIn, via Zoom, via email, our usual methods of reaching out. And then, as Kathleen mentioned, once the travel restrictions are lifted, we'll be able to go see them in person and do our recruitment. Eileen and I have been talking closely about also reshoring of US companies from China. I'm starting with the healthcare sector that are currently manufacturing in China. This would be a very easy first target to bring them back to the country. But this really goes across all industries and all continents where we're working on. Of course, Europe will play a strong role in this with new FDI. China will play a strong role with reshoring of US companies. And then even domestically, we will see that supply chains will be localized more. That companies from a California, from a Chicago, from a Northeast might want to be closer to the Southeast, where a lot of the business growth is expected to happen. And this is something we are working on. This will take some time to identify those lists, to identify the gaps, and then to start reaching out. But we will be ready once business opens up again in the country, that we are out there reaching out to the companies and get business moving. And with that, thanks to you, Rob. Back to you.
Great. Sven, thank you. I appreciate that insight. That was very helpful. I want to thank the recruitment team for joining us today. It's clear that important work is continuing despite the current situation. It's encouraging to hear that ongoing activities that are fundamental to business recruitment, the emphasis on communication with existing clients and site selection consultant relationships in a very genuine and human way, that lead generation activity is happening despite not being able to travel currently. And additionally, that supply chain analysis will help position us positively to rebound from the effects of COVID-19. So I'd like to thank our audience for listening. We encourage you to reach out to any member of the team with any feedback. And thank you for your continued support. For additional resource regarding COVID-19, please visit our website at charlotteregion.com.